Crypto's full of bold ideas, but bringing them to life takes real operational discipline. Today's guest knows what it takes to make that execution happen. Sarah Luehrs is COO of Union Labs, an interoperability protocol connecting some of the most important blockchain ecosystems. She's also a Navy veteran with a background in compliance and operations at projects like Tokensoft and Elixir Network, giving her a perspective shaped by both hands-on execution and big picture thinking in Web3. Sarah, welcome to Token for Your Thoughts.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. Okay, Sarah, you have a really interesting background. You were the division officer for over 100 sailors on a nuclear warship. Most of our guests on here, they have backgrounds in entrepreneurship, tech, finance, but we haven't had anything like this so far. So I'd love to start if you could tell us a bit about that experience and how it shaped your approach to leadership and problem solving and what you do now.
Yeah, sure. So when I was a teenager and I graduated from high school, I went to the Naval Academy in Annapolis. And when you go to the Naval Academy, you pay back your education by serving in the military. So you go through a service selection process, and I chose to go into nuclear power and surface warfare. So I started my career actually in on a destroyer out of Hawaii. I was a communications division officer, and as it happens, the EKMS manager, which is electronic key management system. So its own sort of dated flavor of cryptography, which is only
Ah,
interesting because now I work in crypto.
yes, I love
Yeah.
that.
And then you go to nuclear power school. It's about a year in Charleston, South Carolina, where you learn how to run a nuclear power plant. So it's 6 months classroom, 6 months on the job, shift work type training. And then I was stationed on an aircraft carrier out of Norfolk, Virginia, the oldest aircraft carrier, actually. It was the USS Enterprise.
Ah,
And yeah, and at one point had just multiple machinery divisions that I was responsible for on a day-to-day basis. So had a couple of engine rooms that I was responsible for, and then the main job was really like standing watch in the power plant, and just running operations, maintenance, a lot of personnel management, stuff like that. So yeah,
all
I would
right.
say that's sort of like the brass tacks of
Mm-hmm.
being in the military. Did that for a couple of years. I would say the leadership skills that I learned in the Navy were starting from the first job on the destroyer, where, when you are pushed into positions of leadership, um, with not a lot of experience, which is kind of, I don't know how unique that is to the military in general, but you have like the officer corps that's generally in a leadership position, and then you have the enlisted. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes, you'll have enlisted personnel that you're in charge of technically that have so much more experience than you. And so it's an interesting dynamic where, as the leader, you're relying heavily on those below you, I,
Mm-hmm.
like in a manner of speaking, to educate you and teach you about what they do. And it's your job to sort of put that all together with all the big picture things that you are sort of educated on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, there's just sort of this leadership style that might not be for everybody, but really it's just like being present and learning and asking and being as curious as you can about what everybody does,
Mm-hmm.
because it makes you better at your job, but it also, gives um, the entire team sort of like a sense of purpose, right? Like if your leader is like really interested in like the small things that you do every day, you know, maybe that makes them feel like a little bit more important for the day
Mm-hmm.
or something like that, like even monotonous things. So
Yeah.
my favorite thing to do um, along that route was sort of to understand, the day-to-day things that most people were doing, and kind of empathize that they're not always very exciting. Sometimes they're really monotonous and mundane. Was to sort of relate what they do into the big picture and just like be a constant reminder of how important it is that you do your job well and you do it with integrity and you
Hmm.
do it with vigor, because these little things, they all add up to like the big mission that we're trying to accomplish out here together.
Hmm.
And sometimes, flew right over the head or on deaf ears, but, had positive feedback from some sailors that, that really did sort of at least change their mind about or like brighten their day, on a 6-month deployment. So it can be
Hmm.
helpful. So I really did appreciate that. But overall, just like being present and like learning as much as you can, you know, coming from a place of, um, I'm not an expert, but I am an expert at sort of putting pieces together.
Hmm. Yeah, I think they're really great points, and it's a really great approach because I think sometimes when you are put in that leadership position, you can have thoughts like, well, I should know everything. I need to appear as the all-knowing, wise leader who's taking us forward. And so it can be hard sometimes to, you know, ask questions because
Hmm.
the thought might be like, oh, but I'm going to look like I don't know what I'm talking about. But I think it's like you said, it reassures people that you're interested and you want to know what they're doing. And then also you're getting really good insights and you're gathering all the info that you know to make the best decisions and strategies. And I also like the point about providing context as well for those seemingly mundane jobs. That's always my approach too. When briefing tasks, it takes a bit longer sometimes, but I agree. I think it's really important to say, this is the job, and yes, it can be a little bit repetitive or it's not the most exciting, but it's actually super important. This is why, this is how it fits into the good picture. And so that's really nice that hearing that, yeah, you got that positive feedback too, and then I'm sure it helps the people completing, doing those tasks as well to understand that context and how it fits. Are
Hmm.
there any habits or principles that you've carried over from that experience that you still use now?
That is a good question. I think habit-wise, I make a ton of lists.
Love that.
Um, Everything has to be written down. I love accomplishing a task. I love, you know, starting the day with like 10 things, picking three that are priority, maybe scheduling the others for like another day. That's definitely a habit. In the Navy, just like having to be like extremely organized. And then also, you know, standing watch in the power plant, a lot of times like you have to run maintenance. And so I also really got into the habit of like just trying to be like the most productive like watch officer that I could be, to try to, it gives everybody like a nice sense of accomplishment if they like can turn over the watch and they're like, we did all the work for the day for you. Enjoy your
Mhm.
4 hours of watch, but like we did all the maintenance and um, just turning over a good watch. So
Mhm.
leaving things better or like more done than when you started. And then like mostly of all, absolutely like an attention to detail. Attention to detail is extremely paramount. I struggle a lot with this. It's like a perfectionism thing also, but just understanding that, you need to like be double checking yourself, triple checking yourself, because, once you give an order to do something or you know, turn a lever or whatever, like, you should be pretty sure that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, the stakes seem a bit higher, perhaps on a nuclear naval ship than just sending a
Yeah.
typo in an email. So I can imagine.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's so interesting. What an experience. And so how did you make the transition from the destroyers and Navy life into tech and the crypto space?
Yeah, so when I was finishing up my time in the Navy, I started going to business school at night um, to get a master's degree in business. And I did it here in Virginia, in southeastern Virginia, where there's a huge port. There's a port of Virginia here. So some of the people in my class were in the maritime business, and I was really like dead set on like going into the maritime business. It sort of was like a culmination of like all my education to that point. I went to the Naval Academy. I studied ocean engineering. We did like, port and harbor construction as part of our was like my favorite course. I sailed around the world on giant ships, and then I was going to business school. So like all of that stuff is sort of kind of coming together. And then I had a baby. And then
Okay.
and then sort of put that on hold, and my husband was going to medical school at the time. So I chose to stay home, or we chose that I would stay home with our first daughter, and then had another baby. So I have two girls.
Aw.
And it just so happened. So I did work in the maritime industry just as much as I could, given all that stuff while going to business school, etc. And then got the opportunity through my best friend, actually from the Naval Academy. She worked at the Elixir Network. She needed somebody she could trust to run the compliance KYC AML for their token offering. And so that was literally my first job in in blockchain was through compliance. So I
Wow.
yeah, so I self-taught myself everything about compliance, KYC, AML, um,
Oh,
and
wow.
went from there.
Dove straight in. And what was your first impression of crypto blockchain? Was that your sort of first interaction with it, or had you come across it before?
Um, no, that was more or less my first like true interaction with it. Of course, I was curious before, and so
Yeah.
had, learned the basics about, how blockchain works, how it's different from like traditional internet, everything about, you know, its benefits, decentralized, immutable, censorship resistant, it was difficult to hack because of how it was decentralized, all that kind of stuff. So I had like a general understanding of that, but went straight into compliance and learned like heavily, why are we doing compliance? Like, what are we selling? And started kind of learning through that, why is Bitcoin not a security? Why are we doing things the way that we are doing them? Like, how do you determine what a security is? Like, what
Hmm.
is the Bank Secrecy Act? Like all of these types of things that I just sort of started chipping away at to understand like why things were sort of structured the way they were, what we were trying to accomplish. Um, but overall, like, was immediately intrigued with, like I said, the structure of blockchain and what it had to offer. I think a lot of people come into blockchain and crypto with the idea that, you can own your own information, you can own your own assets, as opposed to like having to always like go through a third party or like surrender your rights to something just to participate in something, but you could possibly be paid to participate in something.
Hmm. And what was that like? Because I I mean, when was it that you had this role? It's presumably, a few years ago, right? Where
Hmm.
there was even less, uncertainty, less certainty rather than there is now. So how did you approach that, figuring out compliance when things just, are not very black and white or clear?
Yeah, I think that, well, they did the token sale at on a platform called Tokensoft. And so they had done like all of the heavy lifting, sort of building those guardrails into the platform. And so they did the hard work of coordinating with people from the SEC and different like legal firms to sort of figure out like how can we compliantly get a user from, like signing it up with an email, like to purchasing a token in a compliant way, where this company that's doing the token offering can safely say, like, yes, like we know who all of our customers are. None of them are sanctioned by OFAC. None of them
Hmm.
are criminals. You know, and the money that they raise, therefore they can take to a bank if they need
Hmm.
to like fund their operations, etc., to build whatever it is that they're trying to build. So uh, the structure was there for me. So it wasn't like I was starting from scratch.
Oh, that's
It was,
reassuring.
yeah, it was more like I was trying to understand like why it was built the way that it was built because,
Hmm.
um, eventually after a couple of iterations of this, like I did get hired at Tokensoft to run compliance directly for their platform and work with like customer operations, client operations, and stuff like that. So eventually you get to the point where you're explaining to clients and customers like why it's set up the way that it is. So you're sort of the conduit of like, you have this product, it's built very thoughtfully with all the rules and regulations in mind. Now you need to be able to translate that in an easy way for somebody to understand, like why do I have to pay for this?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. All right. Interesting. So you are now COO at Union Labs, which is
hmm
an interoperability protocol. Can you tell us a bit about the project and what you are currently working on there?
Yeah, definitely. So Union Labs is, like you said, an interoperability protocol. We're a layer one in Cosmos. Um, but that doesn't mean that like we're kind of stuck in Cosmos. So we
Hmm.
have connections all over the blockchain ecosystem, the blockchain space. So we connect disparate blockchains using like clients and consensus verification. So it's a very efficient way to kind of bridge assets and messages between blockchains that wouldn't ordinarily be able to talk to themselves. So sometimes I use this analogy of, when you're traveling and you have your hair dryer or whatever from America and like you want to like plug it in, in Europe and like it's not compatible. You sort of need that adapter. So
Hmm.
Union builds that infrastructure to sort of get everybody on the same, be able to talk to one another without interruption.
All right. Fantastic. Yeah, I learned that lesson the hard way with a pair of straighteners and caused a little power outage when I was in Europe in my room. It's like, oh no. Um, all right. So you guys recently raised $12 million in a Series A funding round. Congratulations. What are your plans for that? How do you plan to utilize this new capital to grow the project?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost is hiring. We hired a couple new engineers and some more business development people, and then also just like ecosystem leads. So right now, the job of our company is we have a proven product. We need to educate people about that and get the word out about it and get some excitement about the project. So we actually have also community moderators all over the world. We have community moderators in Latin America, Turkey, Nigeria,
Oh, wow.
India, yeah, where
Amazing.
else? In Romania. Yeah, so just getting the word out. They even host like in-person events for us to educate like their communities, a lot of like university students and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Um, we're working a lot um, with different projects to just connect to different ecosystems, different applications. We also have a incubator program where we kind of we like kind of bring on like builders and entrepreneurs and educate them about union infrastructure and just sort of work for like synergies where they can, go on and develop something and build with union.
Hmm.
So we're on our first incubator program, but our second set of fellowships. So we started with one set of fellowships back in October, and we'll have a set of fellows come out of this incubator too. So um, a lot of different things with
Awesome.
with the
Very
race. Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And also preparing for mainnet, our mainnet launch, and then our token offering. Hmm.
All right. Very exciting. So, as COO, you're responsible for all things operations. Can you give us an idea of what that involves and if there is such thing as a typical day, which for most of us, I know that there's not really, but what that might look like?
Yeah. It's really interesting because, you know, my role has evolved also since starting at Union. I was hired in September of 23 and was the first non-technical hire at Union. And
Oh, wow.
so, as the head of operations back then, a lot of the things that I did day to day were basically like anything not tech, you know?
Right.
So I
Just all the other stuff.
Yes, I did other stuff. A lot of coordinating with the lawyers to establish entity structures that we're going to need for our mainnet and token launch. Um, HR setting up, you know, employee and contractor agreements, like negotiating terms, setting up benefits for U.S. employees. Down to like designing swag and hand delivering it to conferences and designing like a booth for ETH Denver, like lots of different types of things, managing side events, schedules, um, appearances, panels, like all of these types of things.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so, it started off sort of, like I said, like it's everything else. Oh, a big one since day one has always been managing the budget. So, kind of coordinating the traditional like fiat rails and crypto rails and, bookkeeping for both of them and like putting them together for a big picture of like where we are financially as a company, making sure we're not overspending month to month, like that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Just that too, as well.
Yeah. And then luckily we hired some marketing and business development people. So some of those responsibilities have certainly gone down over time. Right now, we're really working with our foundation, the Union Foundation, to get ready for mainnet and the token launch. So, anybody who's gone through that in this space knows there is a lot of work and coordination to do ahead of something like that. And just a lot of, weighing trade-offs. So, a lot of data, um,
Hmm.
modeling and stuff like that, just trying to make sure that we're doing the best that we can like for the longevity of the union project and for the community that's been supporting us along the way.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but I think what it really comes down to for me as the COO is I really think that I am a supportive role. I have a personal motto of not being, a barrier to forward momentum. I want to be available to execute on things as fast as I can. Things in Web3 like move like super fast. So
Yes.
um, I want to be a supportive role for the innovators, for the builders that need sort of that back end like office stuff to like keep moving forward, but like in a thoughtful way. I want to have also like the experience and knowledge that keeps us like thoughtfully like tethered to the ground. Like if we have to pause like for a reason, like it is because, you know, my experience or like my knowledge or like, things I've gained here and there, or like even from advisors or like legal, you're like, hey, like you want to reconsider this. But other than that, like I really hold so dear like that I am a supportive role. Um,
Hmm.
and uh I get a lot of pride, like personal pride on like helping those with the big ideas like get there.
I think that's a really good approach and a great way of looking at it, because I can imagine if you're managing things like compliance and the budget, sometimes there probably are going to be conversations around, well, you know, this is in reality what it's going to cost, or conversations around budget and, the scope of how things can be done and, maybe any limitations. So I think that's a great approach to have, is ultimately wanting to be supportive and enabling around people's goals and the mission, etc. So
Yeah.
in terms of, I mean, talking about compliance, how do you approach that, with where we're at the moment, and do you have any advice or insights for other projects founders in the space who are also trying to navigate compliance?
Yeah, super good question. I think that hmm, it kind of it really, really depends, first of all,
Hmm.
on where, like, first of all, like what kind of compliance are you talking about? Are you talking about like KYC AML compliance, like bank regulation compliance, like all of these types of things, So my first piece of advice is get a lawyer who knows what they're talking about, who has experience on helping successful Web3 companies go to market. Um, and get referrals if like you need to. So that would be my very first piece of advice because,
Hmm.
um, they're the absolute experts. My second piece of advice is to just get somebody who has get an operator that complements your style as like a CEO or a founder, right? So like you want somebody who's going to do all of the things that are like low energy tasks for you,
Hmm.
like stuff that you hate doing, like they should be good at. Um, and, rely on them to sort of take care of those types of things. Um, and hopefully, and I would imagine like most founders don't really care too much about compliance, like begrudgingly, like we'll comply, but yeah, get an operator that has some experience with compliance because, you know, when it comes down to it, like if you're offering a token, um, the regulatory like guidance is unclear still at the moment of what kind of asset that token is, right? And so
Hmm.
we need to figure out a way to keep moving forward in um the least or the most risk averse sort of method. And so, you do certain things uh, along the way that don't prohibit you from, launching your product or your token, but that, you're not going to end up in a situation where, you have to, um, shut down your protocol, right? So it's a balance.
So you've spoken a lot about the different things that you are working on and that you manage, finance, HR, compliance, lots of moving parts. How do you, I guess, approach just managing all of that? And like you said, sometimes there could be pauses or things could take a different direction. Yeah, what is your strategy for that?
Yeah, I think just try not to get overwhelmed. Um, and the lists help me a lot
Hmm.
that I mentioned, just making a lot of lists and yeah, having a general like cadence, like week to week, month to month, certain things come up every month, certain things come up every week. Um, and then a lot of time is spent just educating myself so that I can be that like red flag, if necessary,
Hmm.
when that forward momentum's like going. So I spend a lot of time just learning as much as I can um, about the law, about like taxes, about other projects, about I'm in a great like crypto operators group, and they're an excellent sounding board and super super helpful when people have questions. They're an incredible resource to me.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I bet that's really helpful. Yeah, all makes sense for an environment that can sometimes be unexpected and lots of things going on. For founders and operators looking to scale and grow their projects, what lessons have you learned? Is there anything that you wish you'd known earlier, or is there any advice you can give them, around any of the things that you do cover, like where it's something like on the HR side or, in terms of finance?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, hiring is always going to be your first and like most important task as an organization. So really vetting potential hires through, headhunting agency, through interviews, through referrals, looking at their past work, understanding, what they've done in the past and what they've done for those organizations in the past, um, is a is a really good first step. For hypergrowth, which Union is actually kind of experiencing at the moment, it's really fun to see, is crypto and blockchain companies have a very interesting, um, almost like religious following of like certain projects. You have to have something that helps you stand out from other projects. So we actually adopted a whale shark as our mascot. And so we did a huge like NFT campaign on or NFT giveaway of our whale shark NFTs, and everybody loved it. And they're still
Oh,
trending and like
cool.
doing really well in the marketplace. But yeah, we gave them all away.
Amazing.
And in fact, recently we had just adopted like a real life um, whale shark in the Galapagos Islands, and we're
Oh,
going to
no
do a
way.
contest to name it. Yeah.
Oh,
So just
fun.
having things that stick out, but like can be like ubiquitous, like globally ubiquitous, right? So like
Mhm.
not like focusing in on like individual like events, for example, and like just dropping all of your resources there. I've found that like I hate to say this, but like conferences aren't necessarily like the best return on investment when it comes to growth, right?
Mhm.
So I find that companies that are in our position that are just really getting started, like most of our ROI comes from a combination of these like grassroots, smaller uh, events where we have like community ambassadors sort of set up stuff with universities, educating them about our tech, and then these
Mhm.
like global like campaigns with like the NFTs, and then we have a couple of other, just catchy mimetic type of things that have caught on over the past. But so there's all of that, and then they all kind of get grouped together in our. We have a dashboard, that gamifies the whole system, and gives people XP for participating in different ways. And it looks across like the whole spectrum of things from like social stuff to on-chain activity. Um, yeah, and like even like I think we've integrated like the Cato leaderboard stuff, the yappers.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
yeah, so just, you know, crypto is a global community, and so like reaching
Mhm.
people like on social channels is going to be just way more beneficial to your project than like honing in on like a specific like event at a conference or something like that is what I've sort of found to be like our strategy overall, and it's been I think it's been pretty successful so far. Like we have a really great community, very passionate people all rooting for us. So yeah.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, those are really great insights. So thanks for sharing that. And it totally makes sense. So, what are some of the challenges that you have experienced as COO? You said that you've experienced this period of hyper growth. Have there been any growing pains that have come from that? And are there any insights that you can share about how you've like overcome them?
a good question. I think, yeah, we have like a pretty incredible leadership team. Um, our CEO is very hyper aware of um, the attention economy. And so but he's sort of been able to couple that with also just like a ridiculous understanding of blockchain technology and like, how to have the best product and garner the most attention and get users happy. So I really have like learned so much from him and then some other leaders on our team too, just finding opportunities and following through like and making them happen. As far as growing pains go, I think the hardest thing for like the organization, like at the moment is, we want to integrate with everybody like as soon as possible, but the narrative
Hmm.
shifts very quickly in Web3. So you can spend a lot of time sort of trying to um, get your tech ready to like integrate with a chain where, and then like, a few weeks later, there's like another like much more popular chain. I think it's more like the narrative shift and then like market fluctuations and sentiment like
Hmm.
that. But honestly, we don't get really distracted by like the market and stuff like that. Like we have a very like strong mission and goal and we're just pushing through. So we're building in the bear market, bull market, it doesn't matter.
Hmm. Yep. Heads down, just keep heads down, building. It's a good strategy to, and it can be difficult. It's like, that, what is it, shiny thing syndrome, where
Hmm.
it's just, you can get distracted, you can get excited by something that, as you said, like that is constantly moving and constantly changing. So it can kind of distract you and take you off course from your North Star sometimes. So it's
Yeah.
it's good to be able to have that North Star focus and
Hmm.
really be focused on that.
I think, and that's sort of at odds also with, trying to keep your community engaged, right? And like keep
Hmm.
them um, happy. Because, if your whole community is like, hey, we want you to like work on this, and then you're like, but we're like busy doing something else, like
Yeah.
you really want to like kind of find that fine
Hmm.
line. So, um, but like I said, yeah, I am learning every day how somebody manages like this very, very constantly changing landscape. Yeah.
Hmm. And how do you approach working in this environment? Because like you say, it's constantly changing. The narrative is shifting. I can imagine being in the Navy, like that background, you have structure and there are
Hmm.
there are rules and things are a bit more black and white. There's a lot of gray in the crypto industry. Is it how do you approach that?
Yeah, I think most importantly, like I said, I really just try to be a supportive role. Um, because I hate to say it, but I'm not really like the big idea person yet. I would love to like grow into that role, but so I really do focus on like what can I do to be supportive here or like what's important here from like a like an organizational standpoint. Like um is doing this gonna like wipe us out? And are we gonna be like all burnt out after? Or, is this gonna like pump us up and like keep us moving forward, right? So just sort of thinking about those types of things. And then I will never like tell anybody that I'm the expert at anything. I rely heavily on expert advice via our lawyers, like our accounting, like advisor, my colleagues, like I said, from my operators group. So, um, yeah, I think that, you know, it's interesting because a lot of the operators in Web3 like have different specific roles within an organization, but ultimately we've all sort of like been through something. Like we're all like going through, and it's interesting to see that, people move from organization to organization and like the same sort of things come up. Eventually they'll become normal. But
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's awesome to have, like you said, a group and a community where you can share experiences. And like you said, if it happens enough, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, this again. This is
Yeah.
now becoming normal, and it provides reassurance, I can imagine. Do you have any favorite moments or highlights from your time with Union Labs so far?
Um, Favorite moments. I think the the NFT launch was just really, really fun. I've never done anything that fun like in a career before. Coming from the military and then doing compliance for token launches. That was definitely like one of the most fun things that we did.
Yeah. Hmm.
Just it made everybody really happy. People were really stoked about the art.
Hmm.
It was just like a really cool thing to be part of, and then also to like still be a part of, right? Because it's still out there. Like you can go to Stargaze and buy an NFT, and then we love to um, give out. So we'll actually like um, retrieve some of the whale sharks if they go up for sale, just so that we can keep giving them away to like people who, are participating with us
Yeah.
with the protocol and stuff. So I just really think that whole like from top to bottom, it was just like a very big group effort, like between
Hmm.
designers, operations, marketing, tech, um, our BD leads and everything. Like it was just like a really fun to see it all sort of like come to fruition. Because we started the art like months and months before like we launched the
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that does sound like a fun project. I love how you're further bringing that to life with actually adopting a real whale shark. I'm
Yeah.
gonna keep an eye on that and see what the name is that gets picked. That sounds
Yeah,
really
so
fun.
we're actually taking sort of like you can go to Wandering Whale Sharks on Twitter, on X, and put in like a suggestion for a name, and then we'll sort of go through all the names and then put some top ones up for a vote. And so the community will get to vote on the name of our whale shark. We don't know if it's a boy or
Exciting.
girl yet, though.
Okay.
So
All right. I might have to suggest a name then, see if it
yeah,
wins.
yeah. A lot of people are thinking Wanda or
Uh,
Uni. I know there's a lot of
okay.
really creative and fun names out there. But yeah, I just think it's a fun like community engagement. It's like all
Mhm.
like positive vibes. Like I think
Yeah,
in
definitely.
crypto, there's just like the prices in crypto, there's high highs and low lows, but like
Hmm.
all like anything that's just so nice and good vibes and just like a real good like community builder. It feels it's so cool to be part of it because, you know, I never thought in my life I would ever help launch an NFT.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it does sound really fun, and like you said, a great way to engage with the community. And I bet it sounds still fun, like seeing where the NFTs, how they get used and where they go, and then looking out for some to retrieve and then re-give them away.
hmm
Yeah, it sounds super fun. So, looking ahead, what goals are you guys working towards? You said you have your upcoming mainnet launch. What can people expect from that, and who are you hoping to target with that? What are
hmm
who are your ideal users that you're hoping to engage?
That's a super good question. We actually did a kind of like an alpha mainnet where we help facilitate bridge transfers during the Babylon launch, and we are um, supporting heavily like the BTC Fi sort of narrative where you can enjoy the security from Bitcoin or like use your Bitcoin without it like leaving Bitcoin network like in
Mhm.
DeFi.
Ah,
It's sort of a new like paradigm shift for like another way to get like Bitcoin, like bridge the Bitcoin maxis to like
hmm,
the DeFi people. So
yeah,
yeah, we help facilitate that, and so that's definitely a group of users that we're hoping that continue to sort of use Union. So we're integrated on mainnet with um, Ethereum, Corn, Bob, and Babylon.
very
Um,
cool.
yeah, so that's sort of like all in that BTC Fi space. Certainly not an exhaustive list, but you know, amongst some of the more prevalent ones. And then in general, yeah, we have a bunch of connections like in our testnet. If you participate in the Union testnet now, um, you get put onto our admin dash or not our admin dashboard, our user dashboard to earn XP ahead of our mainnet and token launch, like our official mainnet and token launch. So,
Nice.
but yeah, so those are the big things. So ultimately, um, for Union, it is. Like, I mean, the goal is to be the blockchain of blockchains and to be the ultimate settlement layer for any like bridged assets from
All
any
right.
blockchain to the other. Yeah,
Nice.
small
I love
goals.
that.
Hmm.
Yeah, just a small goal. No, that sounds brilliant and very exciting stuff. Do you have a date or timings for the mainnet launch?
Yeah, nothing is public yet, but on the near horizon.
Okay. All right. We'll keep a lookout for that. So, where's the best place for people to go to find out more about Union?
Yeah, so the best place to see, day-to-day updates is at union_build on X. You can go to our website, union.build, um, or you can go to app.union.build for our testnet app, and then dashboard.union.build for the user dashboard.
Amazing. Awesome. And I'll make sure to include the links to all of those in the show notes. Well, this has been such a great chat, Sarah. Thanks so much for coming on the show. It's been so interesting hearing about everything from your Navy days, everything you're doing at Union Labs. And yeah, it's been really interesting hearing, more behind the scenes, hearing those insights around compliance, around operations. Things you shared, I'm sure, are going to be super insightful to our listeners also building in the space. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's been such a great chat. All right, so that's it for today's episode of Token for Your Thoughts. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe and follow the podcast for more insights from the leaders shaping the future of crypto and Web3. We'll see you on the next episode.